What's up guys, Carter here from Part-Time Overland, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do the rear axle seals and bearings on the 3rd Gen 4Runner. Now, this is a job I have been waiting to do and kind of avoiding doing for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. The reason I've avoided this is I'm pretty much willing to do any job on this 4Runner. In fact, I've done most jobs on this 4Runner, but the one thing I almost entirely refuse to do is press work, anything with bearings. It's just a pain in the butt. For the front ones, you can kind of get away with not having a press. For the rear ones, you need a press and you need some specialty tools that you're only going to use like once. So after much deliberation, after much research, I have decided to go ahead with this job. I am going to be doing all the work on the actual seals themselves, and then with the actual bearings themselves, all the ABS rings and all that press work, I'm going to take to a shop. According to the shop, it's going to be about $550 for both sides, which is I'd rather not pay that, but it's honestly not too bad. So that's my route of doing it. I've seen a lot of tutorials on YouTube and Timmy the Toolman and 4Runner and stuff of actually taking off the ABS rings and pressing in the bearings and all that stuff. Is it possible if you have a garage and a press and all that stuff? Yes, I'm gonna do it a slightly different way, and like I said, have a shop do that. So let's put this thing on jack stands, let's take off the wheels and dive into it.
Now, first things first, it's time to get this vehicle jacked up and the wheels taken off.
So, I'm sure you guys notice, I have this super nice DeWalt impact wrench. Normally I just do all this stuff with hand tools, but because of a recent job on the front end, had to take off a CV nut that was completely stuck. I ended up picking up one of these, and oh my God, is it a game changer. You can definitely do all this stuff, like up until this point. I've worked on this 4Runner for 4 years, just all with hand tools, and it works fine. But this thing is amazing. And one thing I'm testing right now, it has a couple different modes. It has settings 1, 2, and 3 for different speeds and torques. And then it also has a 4th setting, which has a little picture of a bolt on here. And what that setting does is it basically kind of puts like minimal torque needed into the nut. So it starts out really slow and then it kind of ramps up until it just barely has enough torque to undo that nut, and then it slows down again. So that's a super nice setting if you just need to undo like lug nuts and stuff. If you're ever thinking about upgrading from hand tools, get one of these things. You will not regret it. Worth every penny. Oh, our current situation is we have these stuck spacers on here. Normally, you'd have to kind of pry them off, get a pry bar in there, bang them with a hammer or something, but I'm trying something new. Because I'm working on the rear axles, I actually picked up this rental tool from, I think it was Advanced Auto Parts. So this is a slide hammer, so I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna see if I can slide hammer this thing off. Let's see about this. Oh, no way. Dude, that is the best invention since sliced bread. Holy shit, that works so well. All right, this time I'm gonna hold it like this so it doesn't fall down. Ready? 3, 2, 1. No way. Oh my God, I might have to get one of these.
After removing the wheels, it's time to drain our rear differential.
When you're changing out differential fluid, whether it's your rear diff, front diff, transfer case, whatever it is, one of the most important things, especially if you live in the Rust Belt, it's very important to undo your fill before you undo this. Why is that? Well, if you just drain this whole thing out and for some reason this is stuck in there, you can't fill it back up. I'm gonna try my new favorite friend. Again, I'm gonna use it on the screw setting so it doesn't over torque this. There's been a couple times when the wrench has slipped off because it needs so much force and it kind of dings up the edges of this. So let's see how this thing does. This is a 24 millimeter, by the way. Piece of cake. And let's give her a crank. Ah. Gonna keep pressure on this lower one until we feel it's almost all the way out. Keep pressure, and 3, 2, 1. There we go. We've been letting this drain for quite a long time, and I actually need to use this on the ends of the axles when I pull them out. So what I'm gonna do is we have a little drain bolt here. There are washers on here, and these are crush washers, so it's best to replace them. I'm actually going to replace them, just not yet, because I do not have the crush washers. So for now, I'm just gonna stick it back in as is, just so that oil doesn't drain out all over my driveway. Then we'll come back in a little bit, replace the crush washer, and torque it down properly.
Once the parking brake is off, we can go ahead and start removing the cable from the rear axle.
There we go, both sides done.
Next up, we're going to work on removing this wheel speed sensor. Now technically you don't have to do this step to get the axle out, but to me it seemed like a good opportunity to take this speed sensor out and clean it up since we were doing so much other work.
Get a nice firm grip on there, and then let's see if we can get a screwdriver under here now and start tapping it up. Start prying it out, nice and gentle. Okay, there she comes. Alrighty, nicely done, look at that. Now we can disconnect the brake lines. If you guys don't have this tool, I strongly recommend it if you're doing any sort of brake work. They're called line wrenches. It's almost like a full socket, but just with that one notch. And a lot of times these things will just be kind of tight in there. And so if you try to use an open end wrench, it'll just strip them out. This is a 10 millimeter, by the way. Nice grip on there. And that comes out super easy with these line wrenches. Before I take this off completely, I'm actually gonna get in here with a little brush and just clean this up a bit so that when we put it back in, it's not getting dirt into our brake lines. And there comes the nice drip. All right, we'll go ahead and do this on the other side. I'm not gonna show it because it's just same old, same old. Now we can move on and get these guys undone. I believe those are, what are those? Probably 14s. Yep, 14 millimeter. If you have any struggle getting these cracked, I highly suggest, well, you could use a breaker bar too, but this extra leverage does the perfect job. It's just using the handle from my jack. Okay. That one is cracked as well. All right, there we go. That top one was easier.
Now, you guys may have noticed all that brake fluid dripping down, and that is completely my bad. Normally, it's a very good idea to just clamp your rear brake line. I completely spaced doing that step, so I lost a little more fluid than I should have. If you do the same, it's no issue. We can just refill that later with some .3 brake fluid, but if you have the chance, I would strongly recommend just clamping that rear brake line with some sort of pliers or vice grips.
Now, for the moment you've all been waiting for. I have one of these, just an old rag to run along the axle as it comes out. I also have a cardboard box because when I take this out, I'm gonna set it up on these studs and I don't want to damage the studs, so I'm just gonna set it in that cardboard. So we'll put this aside and this whole thing should come out. There we go. All right, now when you're taking this out, if the axle scrapes along inside a little bit, probably no harm, but I'm going to try and kind of pick this whole thing up as one unit and bring it out as centered as possible, just to keep from damaging the splines or anything like that. And I'm also trying to kind of clean up some of this oil as we go and flip her up. And I don't think this box is big enough. Quick. There we go. Whew. One side is successfully out. So while we're waiting for this to drain out, we can take a look at this and see what's going on. So here, that is our axle seal. Now this is an ABS version, right? With the ABS sensor, wheel sensor going there. So if you have the version like I do, that seal is set back in there, I don't know, 1.5 inches, something like that, all the way tapped in there. And that is a thing that we need to replace because it's leaking. Basically, it's supposed to trap all the oil back that direction. And obviously, with this out, oil can leak here, but these are so old that oil is leaking past them, even though the seal's still there, it's just worn out. If we take a look over here, this is what our whole axle shaft looks like. This is the splines that go into the differential. Coming down, we have our bearing down there. So the bearing is actually pressed into this whole hub assembly. Then we have one, I don't know what these are called, retainer rings, sealing rings. We have the ABS ring with all these grooves. I think that actually is what the speedometer picks up on for the speed as well. And then we have this inner seal ring, this inner retainer ring. What's really interesting about this inner ring is you can see there's this wear mark right in the center, that kind of shiny spot. So this is the mating surface that the oil seal is sitting on, which this is a really good sign because you can see that seal is riding right in the middle. So that seal is exactly where it needs to be. So it's not a seating problem of the seal or anything, it's just that the material is worn out, that it's actually leaking. But that is a really good sign. If you did not have this ABS ring, this outer ring is what the mating surface that seal would be riding on. So that's what we're working with, guys. We can go ahead and pull this seal out on our own, and I'll show you how to do that. You can use pliers, but I'm gonna show you with that slide hammer that I had earlier. I believe that's the best way to do it. And then this whole assembly is what we're gonna be taking down to the shop, and they're gonna use a whole system of presses and stuff to pull off these 3 rings, pull out that old bearing, and put in the new ones. So slide hammer time. This is a rental tool I picked up from Advanced Auto Parts. I went to O'Reilly, that's my main spot, but they didn't have it. Advanced seems to have some better rental tools. So this is a slide hammer. I think it's, 5-pound slide hammer. Like I showed you before, you can use this for all sorts of stuff. I already pulled off those wheel spacers with this. But what this does come with is a couple of these little things. So we are going to assemble some of this together, and this is actually going to be our seal puller. I've seen other people jam like wrenches in here. You can even do it with a pry bar and just leverage it out. But I just don't like that method because what you're ending up doing is, let's say you're doing it with a pry bar, you stick a pry bar under the seal, and then not only are you running the risk of marring up the inside of this with the pry bar, but the other part is you're also leveraging it off of the edge of this. I mean, theoretically, all this area is not sealing anything. It's just that area and on that way that matters. But like I said, I just like the idea of keeping all my surfaces as clean as possible. So that's where this thing comes into play. Let me assemble this and show you how it works. Well, check out this assembly. The really cool thing about this slide hammer is that everything is modular. It comes with like a bunch of different attachments. And so even, for instance, with these little arm grabbers, this is a 2-spline attachment where obviously there's 2 of these. They also have an attachment in there that's 3. So you can really do all different assortments and just kind of build it out in a super modular way, depending on what you're working on. In this case, what we've done is, like I said, we have these 2 kind of tongs here, and then there's this sort of beveled concave disc. And what that does is as you just spin this in, you can see it's forcing these things wider and wider and wider. We'll start by loosening these up. We'll put this inside the seal. This will actually grab onto the inside of the seal, and then we'll force this to widen up. So that's gonna be basically gripping on the inside of the seal. And then just like we did with those wheel spacers, we'll just give this a little tiny bit of a tug. This axle seal won't need much pressure at all, and that thing should just come flying out. Okay, nice and snug. Make sure you have a good firm grip there. And then again, I'm gonna hold it from this end so it doesn't come flying back. I'm actually gonna support this with my knee. We should just have to give it a little hit. Probably won't take much pressure at all. And 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. And there we have it. Axle seal is out. And there you go, guys. Here's a closer look at the axle seal. You can see it bent in this part where we were tugging on, but that just comes out super, super clean. So I think this is a really, really good method of doing it. It's also technically free because you go down to the store, you rent this. I want to say it was, I forget, it might have been like close to $200 for this tool. It is a pretty expensive tool, but as soon as you take it back to the store when you're done, they refund you 100% of your money. So essentially it's free. Yeah, and that's just a super clean way of doing it. Pretty much 0 chance of marring up the inside of this. And I just feel like it's, I don't know, I like using the proper tools for the job, and this is certainly the proper tool.
Now at this point, it was time to move onto the driver's side, and right about here is where we ran into something that is perfect for highlighting exactly why you need to do this job.
If you're wondering why your rear brakes aren't working so good, there's a slight possibility it could be because of all this oil on the brake pads. I mean, probably not, but that could contribute just a little bit. So guys, this is one thing I almost completely forgot about, which is that part of the thing about changing your axle seals, or one of the reasons rather. I just wanted to do it because I knew it was leaking oil. And one thing I almost forgot about until I took off the drum brake is that if oil from your differential is leaking down your axle and through your axle seal, most of that is going into your drum. And I've been having brake issues for quite some time now, like a couple years, and it's been fine because I have these nice big Tundra brakes up front, so I haven't really noticed it. But as soon as I took this off, I mean, that thing is completely caked in grease. I mean, the rear brakes are doing absolutely nothing.
While your axle is still on the truck at this point, it's a really good time to check your bearings. In this case, I already had the parts, so I knew I was going to be replacing the wheel bearings anyway, but if you're doing this job just to replace the axle seal and you're not sure if the bearing is good or not, you can just go ahead and grab this whole assembly, give it a little wiggle, and if it's wiggling like it does in my case, then you know you need to replace those bearings.
Woo! Look at that! My new favorite tool.
Also, just a quick tip, if you're working outside like I am, I would highly recommend you plug up your brake lines both on the backing plate as well as on the axle housing itself, just so that any dirt and debris doesn't get inside there. The other thing I'd recommend doing, as you can see here, I've actually used one of my shop gloves to put it over the axle housing, again, so any water, dirt, debris, and whatnot doesn't get in there. There's oil in there and things will want to stick, so just make sure that's all nice and covered up.
Alright you guys, now the only thing left to do before we bring these puppies into the shop is take the rear brake drums apart. Now, as far as replacing all the axle seals and bearings and whatnot on the back of this, you don't actually have to take off the brakes, but since these are so greasy, I feel like it's a nice thing to do before I take them into the shop. And also, I'm replacing all this stuff regardless. I already have brand new brakes. I bought a whole new kit a few years back, so it needs to come off sooner or later. So it might as well be now.
Now, if you guys are interested in seeing a step-by-step on exactly how to take these brakes apart and also put them back together, I will have a separate video just on the rear drum brakes. But for now, this video is just about the axle seals, so I'm going to fast forward this and cut to the important part.
Alright you guys, so here's our setup. Got the drum brake down on the ground, and that's a nice base for this whole axle shaft to sit in. Now normally, if I weren't doing any work to these bearings and rings and all that stuff, I'd be a little bit hesitant about pressure washing this, but since we are replacing all this stuff down here, that's totally fine. The only thing I'm going to try to avoid a little bit is this brake line, so we don't get water in the brake system. Other than that, I'm just going to blast this thing, try to get all this dirt and grease off. I'm going to go turn on the hose and let's get washing. All right, you guys, and we are ready to roll. You can see these things clean up pretty well. They're still drying off a tiny bit, but I got them mostly dry with the air, and they'll just continue to air dry. As you can see, I've got some towels around them, making sure they're held in place so they're not going to roll around, and obviously got some plastic and more padding underneath so they're not banging around and getting everything greasy. I also have some towels up on this end. It's very important to keep these splines intact. I just recommend maybe wrapping them in a little towel, little padding, stuff like that. Also up here, I got my box of parts, new snap rings, new bearings, new ABS rings, all that good stuff. So there we go. Let's take these puppies down to the shop. All right, you guys, well, check out. We just got these puppies back from the shop. First of all, I just want to let you know that the shop I went to is called Charlie's Garage. If you guys are in the Boulder area or anywhere close to Denver, anywhere in Colorado, I highly recommend going to Charlie's. I'm not sponsored in any way. I just genuinely believe they do very good work, and I'll show you part of that in a second. Pretty much on my 4Runner, I do almost everything: engine work, suspension work. The one thing that I refuse to do is press work. Maybe one day I'll get a press and buy a bunch of tools and stuff, but typically when you're pressing stuff out, there's a lot of specialty tools and a lot of stuff you're only going to use once every like 10, 20 years if you're just working on one vehicle. I brought it down to Charlie's. They do really good work at a pretty reasonable price, so make sure to go check them out if you're in town. With that said, let's take a closer look at these. I'm going to show you an interesting thing that they actually did to install these, and we're also going to talk about some of these rings more in detail. as I come up close to here, hopefully you'll be able to notice the color of these. First, when I walked into the shop, I just mentioned something about that. I was kind of being funny. I said, oh, those rings, they have a cool kind of oily color to them. I just thought it looked cool. But talking with Charlie further, he said the way they install these is actually by heating them up. And if you guys are thinking, the obvious answer is to expand them so they go on easier. That seems obvious, but it's not something that I've actually seen before. A lot of times what people will do is when they're installing bearings, you can put these in the freezer so it shrinks those up, but I haven't really thought of the other way around where you're installing these. Does it make a difference? Do you have to do it? Well, maybe not, but this shop in particular has been doing this stuff for about 30 years. And he said by doing this, these slide on super easy. Sometimes if these are really tight and you press them on without heating them up, there's a possibility that it could create little tiny grooves potentially in the metal and allow an area for that oil to seep through. Is this overkill? Maybe, but I think it's something that's really interesting, and you could even do it at home just with a propane torch and heating these up before you put them on. Now, the second thing that's important to talk about is the direction of this top collar here. Now you're probably wondering, what do you mean direction? It has this nice bevel which goes into the seal, and from factory that's the way it's supposed to go. If you guys have seen any other videos, I first saw this on Timmy the Toolman's channel, and they basically discuss the possibility of flipping this ring over so this beveled side is actually facing down. I'll show you why that's important in just a second, and in fact there is a whole thread on t4r.org discussing that. Basically, the new seals are supposedly sticking out a bit further towards that direction. And so if you flip this ring around, the mating surface is actually going to have more wiggle room. Essentially, if these bearings ever get play in them, it's just going to have potentially slightly better seal. It'll also be a bit more clear in just a second. I'll actually show you exactly how we're going to test this to make sure the seal is riding in the right place. But for just a second, let's jump inside, and I'm actually going to look at the differences between the old seal that we took out versus the new seal and see if it actually matters. All right, you guys, so what's all the hubbub about these oil seals and turning the collars a different way and this, that, and the other? Well, the basic premise is this. This is the old and factory rear oil seal. This is the new version. Supposedly at some point this was, I don't know if it was, probably not a recall, but it was something they realized they messed up. They were having issues where these leaked. To be completely honest, I would never have guessed. After 20 years of owning a car, I wouldn't think it's uncommon to have an oil seal leak. But anyway, that's the basic premise, is that this original design was some way flawed, and so they came up with a slightly newer version. Now, just by looking at these seals, they are really similar. You can see they're the same thickness, obviously same diameter as well. Pretty much the main difference that you'll see is on the back. If we look at it from this direction, you can see this one kind of has a bit more rubber. It kind of angles in more, and there's the rubber surface is actually larger. The old one is just, it kind of goes straight down. I will put up a picture on the screen that sort of shows the direction of the sealing surface and all that. And now that is where this whole idea of flipping around that retainer ring or that sort of metal collar comes into play. I'll try to show you like this. This is kind of the difference that people are talking about. If you look on the left, that's the new seal, and if you look on the right, that's the old seal. It might be a little bit hard to tell, but by holding this kind of popsicle stick or ruler or whatever up, you can see the one on the right, which is the old seal, has a bit more of a gap, and the one on the left is a lot closer. So the debate really comes down to whether you should flip that ring around or not. The idea with having the bevel on it is that when you put the seal on, it has a beveled surface, so it sort of climbs up onto that and doesn't have a chance of ripping that seal in any way. Supposedly it's not an issue if you flip it around. So I had actually asked the shop to flip it around. I just got a call this morning and he says, look, everything went well, but I'm so sorry, we've been doing this the same way for 30 years and we've never had an issue. So we put it on and completely forgot to put those rings on upside down. So my rings are on the correct way according to Toyota. I don't think it's gonna be a problem at all, but in just a second, I'm gonna show you a method where we can actually stick the axles in, turn them around a little bit and see exactly where these seals are riding. So with that said, let's take these back outside and go get them installed. All right, for the installation, we're going to use this Seal and Race driver kit. It basically comes with this thing, which you hit with the hammer, and just a series of these sort of spacers or whatever you want to call them. Now, the idea is to get one of these things that fits as big as it can, so we're getting as much mating surface on the outside of this. Obviously, it still has to fit within the axle housing. The one I found that looks like it's gonna work is this one that came out of H. This fits nicely in the axle housing. And when we put it on here, you can see it pretty much totally covers that up. So we're gonna drive it in mostly with that. At the very end, there's that kind of beveled surface, so if that gets in our way, then we might have to step down one size. But let's get this cleaned up and we'll press in the seal. So we've gotten this cleaned up. It's really important to make sure this surface is cleaned up because that's going to be the sealing surface inside there. Also make sure your new seal is clean. It should be because it just came out of the packaging. I'm just going to basically push this in by hand and it should seat in place. It'll just kind of hold itself there. Now we can take our seal driver and we can set that up, and this should fit in very nicely. Just going to take a hammer and start lightly tapping this. And as I'm going, I want to check very regularly how my seal is doing. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but if you look closely, it's sort of starting to seat on that side more than it is on that. And that's the danger, is that you start getting it crooked. So you want to be very gentle at first, check it, and if it's starting to go sort of wonky, make sure you just correct by tapping in the side that's still sitting further out. Just as a very last step, I'm actually going to switch over to a metal hammer, and that's going to give us a better auditory indication of when this is fully seated. And that is what a properly seated seal should look like. You can see all up in here, that should be a nice even surface all the way around. One side shouldn't be sticking out any further than any other side. The nice thing about using a slightly smaller size is even though it doesn't go exactly around the outside diameter, you can just kind of move it around and almost pinpoint little spots. So at this point, we can go ahead and get ready to put the axle in, and I'll show you how to do this little grease test to make sure the seal is riding in the correct spot. And now I actually picked up some of this, it's just some wheel bearing grease.
What?
Grace. Wheel bearing grease. And the reason I got it is because it's a nice red color. And so what we're going to do with this, you can just take a little glob of this nice cranberry jelly, and we just are going to smear this all around this outer guy, or actually I guess it would be the inner one, wouldn't it? So I'm gonna now grab my axle shaft and we are going to carefully insert it. Be very careful that you're not dinging up your brand new seal. Okay, so what we're going to do now, with this fully seated, optionally if you wanted to, you could just screw on one of the nuts just to make sure this is secure. But I'm just gonna hold this in place and basically rotate this axle shaft. Doesn't take long, and with the grease on there, that seal should be sort of creating a mark where it's actually mating up. Let's very carefully pull this back out. And there we have it. Now, sadly, this isn't exactly what I was hoping to see. Ideally, the seal would be sitting kind of right in the center of that, and you can see it's very, very close to the bevel. And that is the reason why a lot of these guys are flipping that ring over, because that would allow basically an extra couple millimeters for that seal to ride on. Is this going to leak? Most likely not. One of the theories is that if the bearings are good, then this is all sitting in place, but once the bearings start to wear out, then there could be play in the system. Just thinking about it intuitively, that doesn't quite make sense to me, because this axle shaft is so long. Like if you think about the front bearings, for instance, there's not really much that's holding. I mean, the bearing and the torque of the CV axle and nut and all that is holding that in place. But with this, you have this long shaft, and so even if the bearing goes bad, that end of the axle is still in the center, so there's not really going to be much play in the system. My theory is that no matter how bad your bearings get, that's not really going to affect where that mating surface is on the seal. If I had my way, would I flip those rings over? Yes. Like I said, I asked the shop to flip those rings over and they just kind of forgot to do it, but I don't think it's going to be an issue, and I guess this could be a good test just to see. Really, once I put this back in, is it going to start leaking? I really don't think it is, but only one way to find out.
Lastly, we are going to remove the old O-ring, clean up the mating surface, and install our new O-ring, optionally with a little grease, and then we are ready to install the axle for the final time, unless you're an idiot like I was.
Oh, you guys, I just got the second axle in and torqued down, and I realized I'm such a moron. I put the axles on the wrong sides. All right, gonna have to flip those out.
And if you didn't make that stupid mistake like I did, then we can go ahead, we can grab our speed sensor, work on cleaning that off. I decided to go ahead and grease it up so it would be a bit easier next time to take it out. And we can also work on retorquing those 14mm nuts in the back.
All right, we're gonna torque those backing plate bolts down to 50 foot-pounds. Well, we've gotten the axle swapped back. Now they are in their correct locations, their correct sides. So it is finally time to reinstall the brakes. Now I have gone ahead and just gone with an entire new brake kit. I had gotten this a while back. I didn't know how bad my drums were in the rear. As it turns out, they're extremely bad. So it's a very good thing we've got this kit. Pretty much this includes everything, including drums. We got new pads up here, and this actually includes every single piece of hardware that we're gonna need. So brand new hardware. I did keep the old stuff just in case for some reason we need to use any of it, but this is all new, clean, and most importantly, not oily hardware. If you're interested in learning how to do the drum brakes, I'm actually going to have a separate detailed video on doing that because it's gonna be a bit of a process. But at least for now, I'm gonna get these a bit more cleaned up, and otherwise I will catch you once we're finished with these brakes.
At this point, we can go ahead and reconnect anything we may have taken off, including the brake lines and ABS sensors, and then it's time to put the wheels back on.
All right, you guys, well, we are so close to being finished with this job. We just have 3 steps left. Number 1, fill the differential. Number 2, bleed the brakes. And number 3, put the wheels back on. And that's kind of it.
Again, if you're interested in knowing details on these specific jobs, go check the link in the description. I will have separate videos on this. But for now, I know this video is getting pretty long, so let's cut to the chase and get this thing back on the road.
Look at you, Roxy. All warmed up. Let's get you into 4-wheel drive and bring you on out of here.
And with a little sunlight left in the sky, it was time for a proper off-road test drive.
Look at that sunset. She's a beauty. All right, you guys, Carter from the future here. I've had this video sitting around for, I think, like 2 years now. It's been about 90% edited. I actually just transferred over the editing project from my old Windows computer to my new Mac computer and realized that it was almost entirely edited. The main reason I haven't finished editing it and uploading it is because I was waiting to see if those axle seals were gonna leak. I was a little bit nervous just based on how close to the edge of those retaining rings that the seals were. And I haven't done a proper check. If you want to do a proper check, basically the easiest thing to do would be you're gonna take out those little ABS sensors and you should be able to see if there's oil in there. I haven't done that, but I haven't had any issues with my brakes. I'm assuming they're all good, but again, if you just wanna do that quick check, you can pop out those ABS sensors in the back there. Anyway, this video is long overdue, so I'm finally finishing up the edit and getting it uploaded. My schedule for releasing these videos is all over the place right now. I'm actually doing music full time, and if you want to go check that out, it's under Amel Music. I'll link the channel somewhere, and that's what I'm doing full time now, is producing and DJing all over the world. So I don't do much of this stuff anymore. I have a bunch of videos on my hard drive laying around, and at some point I'm hoping to hire an editor to get some of these done for me, but every now and again I'll have a little bit of time and be able to finish up one of these edits. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. As always, my name is Carter from Part Time Overland, and I'll catch you guys next time back on the trails.